What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson. This is my husband and co-host, Brett Johnson. Brett, how are you?
I'm good. This is chaotic down here.
Brett's a little anxious, so if you guys have followed me for any sort of time, you've seen the chronicles of how clean Brett is. Brett's extremely OCD, very, very neat person. So we're currently packing up our house because we have to leave. We have to be out of this house in a few weeks, and there are boxes exposed in the background, and it's giving Brett some anxiety. So, guys, we don't live this way. I promise.
I mean, there's no use in hiding it. I mean, everybody is, I think, aware at this point of our situation, but I would rather get ahead of it now and have a little bit of a mess to live in. Not a mess, but just like things sitting out.
There are boxes here present.
Yes. Just random stuff sitting out everywhere. I would rather it be this way than having to do it all at once.
Yeah. I was getting a little bit of overwhelming stress over the weekend when I was looking at the calendar and I was like, oh shoot, the clock is ticking. But Brett is that like stereotypical mom meme where it's like, no one can know that we live here. Like in a perfect world, it would look like a showroom.
See, if you knew my mom,
yes,
you would understand that is how she lives.
Yes, it's true. So this week we're going to talk about something kind of hot topic, hot button. We're going to talk about alcohol. And Carly and I were talking about this. We were texting, and she was like, I think that this is something that you should talk about on the podcast, because I feel like our generation is our views on alcohol are much different, but your and I's view on alcohol was very, very different than it was just a few years ago. But I think like for sure people our age view alcohol, have a different relationship to alcohol than I think that the generations before us. But you and I have kind of evolved in our relationships with alcohol. So I wanted to talk about that because it is prevalent. We're in our 20s and drinking is a common thing. It's a social thing that most people, engage in. But I also think that a lot of people do it out of societal pressure and out of peer pressure. And it's not something that, like, you get a lot of questions when you say I don't drink. Mm-hmm. And people ask, are you pregnant or do you have a problem? Like, it's never like, oh, nice. Like, good for you. No one ever asks. They don't ask that if you say you don't do anything else.
Right.
Like if you say I'm
not a runner.
I don't play pickleball. You're like,
yeah.
Do you have a problem with pickleball? Well, why? Let's get to the root cause. Like, what's going on there? Like, no.
What did pickleball do to you?
Yeah. So for whatever reason, it's just that people, I don't know, people have a lot of opinions on alcohol. So I figured that we would share ours.
I think it makes people uncomfortable whenever you don't drink. And they are. It is a very social thing. It's a group thing. Like, if everybody's doing it, then it's fun and exciting. But then as soon as somebody doesn't do it or they stop doing it, it's like, oh, maybe I should be rethinking my approach here.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that the reason that one person not drinking in the circle has everyone else turning their head is because it's kind of an identifier that's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be doing this? Yeah.
I think it turns the finger around, and it's just an uncomfortable thing because it's like, oh, well, is there a reason why they're not, what is the reason why they're not doing it?
It's like if you go to,
like, if they don't have a problem, if they don't, have some underlying reason, that's not clinical, then
yeah. Why are you choosing to do this?
Right.
Yeah. The way that I think about it is like, if you go to a Pizza Hut buffet and everyone at the table is just like chowing down, they're on their fourth slice, and you just go to the salad bar and everyone's like, what the hell, man? I thought we were in this together. And that's the way that I view that scene.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like I've been in both of those circumstances.
Right.
But I don't ever want it to come off as like we're holier than thou, because we used to drink, and I drank excessively in college. I drank excessively at our wedding. I was going through, we're talking about packing. I texted Brett the other day and asked if I could throw away my wedding dress because it is soaked in Busch Light.
That's gross.
It's disgusting. I spent like a good amount of time in our reception just covered in Busch Light. And that was just normal for us. That was expected. So it's for sure a different season of life that was just way different than how we operate right now. So I don't want it to ever come across as like, if you drink, you are bad or anything like that, just because different strokes for different folks and you're not set in stone to be on a path. Because if you would have told us, or me, I can't speak for you, but you can chime in here. If you would have told me when we got married, and mind you, we got married, I was 2 weeks out of college. So I was like fresh into, and I was very, like, I lived the college life. But if you would have told me then that 5 years later, I wouldn't hardly drink. I mean, I maybe have a drink once every few months, and that's maybe, then I, like, the only logical thing in my brain back then probably would have been like, I must have had to stop for some reason.
Right.
Like, that wouldn't have been a voluntary thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's an acceptance thing for so long at that age. Because if you don't do it, then it's like you're not cool. You know, you're not accepted. And I know that who knows? I don't know how many days a week I drank in college. What would you guess if you had to just go back and guess?
My last year of college, I drank 5 nights a week.
Really?
And like, it wasn't like casual. It was,
because I was gone for that.
Well, and I graduated a year early, so this was my thinking was.
I probably knew that at the time. It's just like it was normal.
Yeah, but my thinking, because I graduated a year early, I took a bunch of extra classes, so like I was operating well. I was on the honor roll. I graduated with honors, but I graduated a year early. 1, to save me a ton of debt, but 2, I was getting married to this hunk after my junior year. So graduated early. So in my brain, I'm like, I'm already being shorted 25% of my college experience.
I gotta make my time here.
I have to make this worthwhile. Yeah. And I drank excessively, like 5 nights a week. And looking back, it's wild how I operated, because now I'm like, if I take two drinks, then I am in bad shape. But you had mentioned, it's just like, it makes you feel more fun and more accepted. And this is what I was talking to Carly about, is what, like, when I was drinking in excess and it was something frequent, you know, several nights a week, I was doing so because I don't feel like I had the self-esteem to back up anything else. So if I could be the wildest or be the most fun or have the craziest story or do something, you know, just fun to fit in, then I felt like I brought something to the table. And since then, I feel like I've developed a lot more self-esteem and self-worth, and I recognize that I have a lot more value to bring, and I'm aware of it. So I feel like I'm capable of saying no. And then I have that understanding that when I do drink, it really just, it hinders the value that I can bring. So it's not a trade-off I'm worth having.
Yeah, that was, you just kind of hit the nail on the head for me, like what alcohol was for me in school, because it became like this crutch, almost a tool that I could use, because like by nature, I'm a pretty reserved person, but whenever I was like in college, especially whenever I started drinking, like I untapped this side of me that I never really knew existed. And I turned into what they called my alter ego, which was Jet Bronson. And so,
that's so funny.
There's, I mean,
I
don't like.
We can sit and talk about Jet Bronson someday.
Yeah, I don't really care to relive those moments of my life. It's not, I don't know. It's part of me, and I look back on my college time very fondly. I don't want to paint it in a negative light. Because I like, you know, how I developed and how I changed and how I figured things out along the way. But yeah, I mean, it became this identifier for me. You know, I could transform into like a really fun, you know, happy-go-lucky, careless, so to speak, personality. And that's not me. You know, that sounds bad. Like I can be fun whenever I'm not drinking, but I mean, like I said, it's like a careless, type mentality, which is just the exact opposite of me. So whenever I got to drinking, then I became Jet Bronson, and then everybody else went crazy because they loved it. So, it's an easy thing to lean into.
And especially because like everyone else went crazy and loved it because it was such a stark contrast to your reality.
Right. Yeah. Which, if it wasn't a stark contrast, then it wouldn't have been exciting.
No. And it's like that in itself is really kind of concerning, or like it's reason for pause, because if you can completely transform your personality just by taking in the substance, like that should kind of, trigger some alarm bells. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think genetically there are, like, fortunately, like, I don't have a problem like with alcohol. Like, if I drink it, it's not like I have this just this insatiable craving to have it, the next day or, the next week, whatever. Right. Like, I don't have that. I know that some people have that. They just have this unfortunate genetic predisposition where it's maybe not just alcohol, but other things, they're more prone to having, or to dealing with substance abuse just because they have that wiring, that mental makeup, that genetic makeup. But at the same time, I do know that historically, like we have had multiple alcoholics in our family, and that is, I'm sure, not out of the norm. I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to that, or, maybe not even like self-professed alcoholics or well-known alcoholics, but like operational alcoholics. So fortunately, I don't have a problem with it, but in our society, it's much more accepted, to have like an alcohol problem, without really identifying it. It's just a way of life.
Well, and it's kind of glamorized. Like,
it really is.
I mean,
it's strange.
It is. It's so strange. And when you are in the thick of it, it doesn't seem strange. But once you kind of take yourself out and really, well, if you like, I urge everyone, it's a very deep, intense listen, but listen to the Huberman Lab podcast. It's Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford professor. He's a scientist. He's extremely, extremely wise, and just so knowledgeable. But he has a podcast talking about alcohol and the effects on the body. And it is a toxin. It is a poison to your body. It does you zero benefit. And for those that urge, like, oh, well, it's good for the antioxidants, like the marginal gain.
That's a marketing scheme.
Yes. And the marginal gain that it's even possible to get from that is so small and far outweighed by the negatives that you'd have from alcohol. So
it's like Stanley off The Office
for the antioxidants.
For the antioxidants, and everybody nods.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow, and this isn't going to be a popular statement because I think that it'll trigger some people. But if you drink consistently right now, and drinking is a regular part of your routine and your lifestyle, you do so because it's a priority to you. Drinking is a priority to you. And if you say it that way, sometimes like that'll kind of trigger a gut check because you're quick to say, well, no, it's not. But you prioritize events that involve drinking because they're priorities to you. You prioritize having drinks at those events because that is a priority for the experience for you. And those are conversations that are really tough to have. And like my family, my family is very, they like to drink. And I grew up around that. So it's one of those things where those experiences are kind of like intertwined with drinking. And again, I don't want to ever seem holier than thou because I don't participate in that so much. I'll have a drink every now and then, but it's like, it does kind of draw a line there because once you know what it does to your body and how you feel on it, then you're like, it's just so clear to you. And it makes it really hard for you to try to cross that line and say like, well, why is this so important to you? Why? Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that it's just become a much more black and white thing to you at this point now that you've removed yourself from that lifestyle? Yeah.
I think that it's a simple pros and cons, and they simply don't they don't outweigh for me. I think that the cons of it are so evident that I don't I don't really see any upside to it.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on what alcohol does in terms of nutrition and how they don't serve you really in any positive way, and how there's all these misconceptions about what the nutritional value of drinking an alcoholic beverage is?
Yeah. So to break down nutritional content in general. So you have 3 macronutrients, and those are what comprises your calories. So protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And each of those has a certain calorie number assigned to them. So 1 gram of protein, for instance, is 4 calories. 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, and 1 gram of fats is 9 calories. So fats are much more calorie dense than protein and carbs. Now, what you don't hear often is that 1 gram of alcohol is actually 7 calories. So alcohol is very calorie dense. Excuse me. Alcohol is very calorie dense.
It's 4 calories per gram of carbs, as well as protein. Both of those are the same.
Yes.
And then fats are 9 grams or 9 calories per gram of fat. And then right there, sandwiched in the middle, is alcohol. That kind of unspoken calorie rule that nobody really understands.
However, protein, carbohydrates, and fats all have benefits in the body and functions that your body needs. You need protein, carbohydrates, and fats every single day for functions in your body. So they're necessary. And you need to take in calories. So it's not to demonize calories at all, but calories coming from alcohol serve you in a negative way. So it is a toxin when it enters your body. And if you think about just daily processes, so cognitive function, just the way your brain works. Let me see, energy production, having adequate energy. Think about how sluggish you are when you're hungover, losing weight, gaining muscle. All of these functions in your body are pretty much put on a back burner. And when alcohol enters your system, it takes a fast pass. It is jump to the line because your body wants it out of there. It's a poison. It does not serve you at all, and it has to get out as soon as possible. So all of these functions then take a back seat, which is why you're hindered in all of them. So if you are someone that drinks regularly, and it doesn't have to be in excess even, if you just have alcohol in your system on a pretty routine basis, and you're really struggling, feel like you're spinning your wheels, and I can't lose weight, and I can't do this, I would highly, highly encourage you take alcohol out of the equation and just give yourself a shot, because it's not doing you any favors, and it really, really hinders your progress.
Yeah. I remember listening to that Huberman Lab podcast on alcohol that you were referencing earlier, and it was astonishing, the things that he was exposing with alcohol, and just simply having like 1 glass of wine every night, and the effects that it has on the body. And that's kind of become, in like the health and wellness world, I don't really know where this began or, how it began, but it started becoming a thing, like where, especially I think in like the middle-aged mom arena, it was kind of professed that this is good for you. It's okay to have 1 glass of wine every night because it has all these benefits for your body. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, that's kind of falls in line with just how like alcohol has been posed to society, where it's a stress reliever, when in reality it doesn't do, like, it heightens your anxiety. There's a woman that I watched a video from, and she was an alcoholic, and she had talked about, she read this book, and I think that the title of it, I wish I actually had my phone. I won't look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure the title of it is like The Easiest Way to Quit Drinking. And this author has several books of like the easiest way to quit smoking, the easiest way.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that one. Yep.
She had basically said throughout this book, the author says, if you want to have a drink, you're more than welcome to have a drink while reading this book. But by the end of it, you're not going to want to. And he explains every reason that you may want to, like that alcoholics or people that have problems with this, or he does it with smoking in that book. Every reason that you may argue that this should continue staying in your life. Like, it's a stress reliever, and he'll provide evidence and be like, actually, it heightens your anxiety. It's not doing you anything good for the stress. And he'll tell you why. It makes you like more social. It's a social lubricant. It makes you more fun and engaging or whatever. And it's like, actually, it limits your mental capacity. It makes you, he just provides all of these things of pieces of evidence of why that's actually false.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the book, he's like, now go have a drink if you want.
Right.
And she, in this video that I had watched, she's like, I didn't want to have a drink. It's wild. It was simply the easiest way to quit drinking.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you see so many videos and like memes and things on the internet where people are talking about how happy hour is just a commonplace, and drinking at the end of the night to relieve stress from your work and your kids and your significant other, that's just normal and it's laughable to society. But that shouldn't be a problem. Imagine if you if you replaced a different substance and put it in that exact same meme. How that wouldn't be allowed. That wouldn't be getting all of the reactions on Facebook from the middle-aged moms and the soccer moms, and getting all these shares on Instagram from that very like quote unquote wholesome community. But for whatever reason, alcohol is exempt from that. I don't know. I can't put my finger on why. It's just allowed, or it doesn't seem to cross that like that negative connotation that
Well, I think it's a culture thing, because our culture, like our and it's not just in our country, it's worldwide for sure, but it's just been made to be the norm. And you see commercials about it, you see ads everywhere you look. You look at billboards, you go to the grocery store. I mean, literally everywhere you look, you're going to get plastered with some sort of advertisement for alcohol. And seeing people, you see a commercial of people drinking alcohol and they look like it's the best day of their life. It's constantly shoved down your throat that it's normal. So at a certain point, after you see that over and over, literally your entire life, it is normal because it's been made to appear normal to us. And there's a lot of salesmanship behind that, because think how much money there is behind alcohol. Yeah. I mean, follow the money. Just like anything else, you have to follow the money. And that is a multi-billion-dollar industry, just alcohol in general. I mean, multi-billion dollars just based on, individual types of alcohol. You look at, vodka, you look at tequila, you look at beer, you look at wine. There's connoisseurs of all these different things, and it becomes a culture in itself. There's this culture of acceptance of alcohol, and then there's the subcultures within the bigger picture where it's like, okay, well, I'm a microbrew connoisseur. Yeah. I'm a whiskey connoisseur. And it becomes almost, it can become a nerdy thing. It can become, an obsession. It can become a sport. I mean, there's just a lot. There's a lot to it.
That mass marketing makes me extremely empathetic to people that do have a predisposed, problem with alcohol, or those that have addictive, tendencies towards substances like that. Because if you had an addiction to cocaine, you don't have to see cocaine ads. You don't have to see cocaine on billboards or commercials at the Super Bowl, but you see it everywhere for alcohol, which... That
takes a lot of self-control.
Yeah, that just makes it a hard situation even harder. So I have,
and it's well known that
empathy there.
What's one of the most well-known clubs / associations, groups, in the world? I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous. Like everybody knows what AA is, even if you don't have alcoholism doesn't touch you at all. Like everybody knows what it is, and it's still very normal. Like even though everybody knows that like. It could very well be a huge problem for you. It's kind of like gambling, it's legal, but it doesn't mean that you should do it. It doesn't serve you in any positive way. No one's going to the casino knowing that they have better odds in the house. Do you go and drink alcohol knowing that it's going to serve you in a positive way? No.
So when you and I were first married, and like I said, I mentioned very clearly that we were drinking heavily at our wedding. And after that, I remember you would come home from work and you would have a beer like almost every night with your dinner. Mm-hmm. I don't really remember that stop, like what made that stop or when that stopped. Like, do you remember what that kind of transition period was like? Or what triggered it?
To be clear, like I still, and you still have a drink every now and then, but like we've had, how long do you think this mini fridge back here
stocked
has
with
been
beer
stocked.
since we bought it.
There's
don't
not
know
been
that-
beer that has been consumed out of that fridge, and I'm not kidding. It may be over a year. Like, that hasn't been touched, and I would say over a year. That beer's probably skunked, but we just generally don't drink alcohol much
Yeah,
anymore.
I'm asking about the transition from
Yeah.
when you did.
Yeah, I'm just wanted to be clear. Like, it's not like we just abstain from having any at all. Like,
I think I made that. I thought I said that.
I think it happened whenever we first got exposed to like the personal development space, and just really like just when we got really involved in like the gym and taking care of ourselves. Like, it just kind of transformed what my priorities were. Things just kind of shifted for me, and it no longer became, it was just no longer something that I was interested in.
Yeah. I think that that's such a strong word to use with it, and I think it should be used more often. Like, it's no longer a priority to you. It's certainly not a priority to me. And as much as it stings, if you are someone that couldn't fathom a life without alcohol, it is because alcohol is a priority to you.
Mm-hmm.
As much as that may suck to hear, but I think that we need to hear it.
Yeah. Like I said to you earlier, it just became a very black and white thing to me. It was no longer like something that was like it wasn't like an emotional connection to it. It became something where I just saw it for what it was. And it wasn't something that I felt better after doing. Whereas, I go and spend time in the gym, or I eat well, or I take supplements that I know are benefiting my body, make me feel better. I drink alcohol, and there's an immediate, result from that action, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't help me. It makes me look worse. My mind's foggy. I mean, all these negative things, and it just starts to become a very black and white issue. So that's really about as simple as I can put it.
For me, I don't know that I ever have really enjoyed the taste of alcohol, which is why I didn't drink it just casually. So if I was drinking it heavily in order to, like black out, to get drunk, and so I would be the one with the fun stories and be the wild one of my friend group. And that, like, it more often than not, the next day I wasn't proud of how I acted, despite being
there's like a regret that you wake up with.
Yeah. And you have that hangover anxiety of like, okay, what did I do? What did I say? Because you're not like signing off on everything you say. Your brain is kind of checked out of the equation. So I personally, now that I just want to be in control, and I want to be able to have a wholehearted conviction behind what I say, that I don't like a substance entering the equation that could have any sort of altercation with that.
Yeah. If it's a drug.
Influence on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a drug, plain and simple. And it alters the way you think and the way you act, and you're not really yourself when you're using it. And whenever you kind of come to terms with that, and you realize that it doesn't, I say this a lot, but it's because it's the easiest way for me to view it. It just doesn't serve me. There's no positive thing that comes from it. There's no positive result.
Yeah. I was thinking, in the years past, you and I could have been invited to like weddings or things that alcohol would obviously be present, and it would be no question that we would have to get a hotel room somewhere there, because driving home just wasn't like, we would obviously be drinking. Even if it was just like 45 minutes away from our house, we would invest and get a hotel room. We would plan around it because we were going to drink. We were going to make the most of that. And that was just part of the experience. There wasn't even a question of being sober.
Right.
And now we do that. I mean, it's very rare if we have a drink at those events, and it's just that shift in priority. And I don't think that it happened as like a black and white shift. It was just when you're working towards building something and you're working towards bettering yourself and you're pursuing your own personal development, and then every single time that enters the equation, it does take a step back, and you're foggy and you're less off, like less clear about what you have to do. And it just, enough is enough. Eventually you're like, you get tired of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
You're working way too hard to just continually get step back. And those setbacks being caused, self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the easiest part about 75 Hard Phase 1, whatever part of the Live Hard program
Oh, no,
that you're in?
alcohol is the easiest for sure.
That's the one that always slips my mind. Whenever somebody asks me, that's not familiar with it, what it is, I always forget that no alcohol is a part of it, because it doesn't even cross my mind anymore. It's like it's not something that I have to think about that I'm giving up.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of, that's just every day.
Yeah, I'm not really, and I know it would be a much different thing for a lot of people.
But I hope that if you're listening to this and maybe you have aspirations to get to a point where alcohol is not a priority in your life and it's not a regular thing, that you're listening to two people that used to drink alcohol regularly, and it used to be very much a part of our lives, that now we don't think about it at all. We truly could care less. If I told you you could never drink alcohol a day in your life, would you be upset?
No.
Yeah, neither would I.
I wouldn't be missing out on much.
No. So I just hope that if you're listening to this and you are currently like in a stage where Brett and I formerly were, that this could be encouraging, that it's not like, well, you either got it or you don't.
Right.
Because it certainly can evolve, and I think that it's just a matter of your priorities shifting over time.
Yeah.
And that can come from a number of things. For us, that was like personal development. Maybe it comes from having kids or your professional life, and whatever that looks like. I think that abstaining from alcohol I see zero downsides to that in your life.
Yeah. And we didn't even really touch on like the financial aspect of it. The amount of money that people pour into alcohol, and yet, are in poverty or are strapped for cash.
It's a priority to them.
Yeah. People pour money between like booze and cigarettes. There's more money than, it would make you sick to know how much money people pour into those two things alone. And, in that same demographic of people that are talking about how financially strapped they are, they're not cutting that part of their budget out. They're not making it, they're not cutting back in those categories.
No. And it's just that priority aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a shift in mindset. You have to figure out what's important to you. And if it is important to you, then you'll make a change.
Yeah. Well, I was honestly kind of eager to talk about this, because I think that it's something that is super relevant to a lot of people. That a lot of people, specifically in my demographic, which I think are like younger 20s or mid 20s, that alcohol is such a prevalent piece of your social life that it probably feels unfathomable.
Unfathomable.
Yes, that word.
It's kind of hard.
That's tough. It probably just feels unrealistic to cut it out of your life, but I'm here to tell you that it's not. And my life has been increasingly better as I've abstained from alcohol, and in the several, handful of occasions in the past couple years that I have drank, I really could have done without, and I don't have any, make or break memories from him.
And you're not a scumbag if it is a part of your, a heavy part of your life right now. Like, that's not the message. The message is that we are, we've been on both sides of the fence, and we are proponents of having it play a much lesser role in your life, because we've seen the benefits of abstaining from it.
Yeah. And I've also seen people who have, wrecked their lives from alcohol. So I've never seen a super negative effect by abstaining from alcohol.
Nope.
But they could find other vices. And that's for another time.
That's a segue.
All right, guys. If you guys have any other topic suggestions or anything you'd like to hear us talk about, we would love to hear your suggestions. You can always send those to our email.
Pod@lexijwellness.com.
But until then, we will talk to you next Wednesday.